MiniWarGaming rules you got wrong.
Hey everybody, Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com, and welcome to this week's Rules You Got Wrong 40K, or in this case, from me, 30K edition. And this is the show where we go over comments that people leave about rules that we got wrong in the hopes that we can both improve things that we actually get wrong and also just educate you guys in case you're getting the rules wrong, because sometimes it happens either way. And I've got a couple battle reports I did last week with Lee at the 30K Salamanders versus Emperor's Children that I will be doing. And we'll follow that by everybody else who has some 40K stuff. Quirk is actually busy filming for something else this week, so you're going to see his rules you got wrong next week for his battle reports that you just saw in this past week, I guess it was. And as usual, if you want to help us out to make these rules you got wrong, then on the actual battle reports, make sure you put a timestamp before you tell us what rules we got wrong, and talk about any sources of where you are correcting rules. If it's not just like the regular rule book, if it's an expansion or whatever, it always helps to know. Let's go right into it. So the Salamanders versus Emperor's Children beat map bat reps. The free one to start. Valor Calls 1 says, Matt, a 360 is a circle, bud. I don't know why I always do that. I'm like, I'm going to do a 360. And somebody else even pointed out that it was more a 160. So it's a 180 when you turn around. That's why it's funny when people say, well, let's just do a full 360 here and go the other direction. It's like, well, if you do a full 360, then you're going the same direction. Kamikaze Thunderhawk. So at about 34 minutes in, I thought vehicles that blew up were removed and replaced with a crater. Only wrecked vehicles stay. That changes things because the cacophony, it's right, cacophony, not cacophony, could have had line of sight to the units behind it. You're partially right. If a vehicle explodes, if it gets an explode result, then it's removed from play. There's no crater that's put. That's a 6th edition thing. You just remove it from play after doing the strength 4 hits everybody within D6 inches. If it's a wrecked vehicle, if it loses all its hull points or any other way to make it wrecked, then it's just left in place as a piece of terrain that has difficult terrain, provides cover and everything like that. I actually forgot to look this one up and see if the vehicle actually exploded or not, so I can't remember if we got that wrong or not. But I believe it was just wrecked. Otherwise, I would have removed it, because that's the typical thing that I would do. Mandalcore, chaplains don't give Fearless anymore. They give Zealot, which no longer give the Fearless special rule, just the same effect. This is right. Now, the Cacophonies, when they fire their weapon, if a unit is not Fearless, and they take wounds, they take leadership tests, and they could take more wounds. And I was like, well, my Fire Drakes are Fearless because they have a chaplain who gives them Zealot. But Zealot doesn't give, it used to give Fearless and Hatred, now it gives Hatred and automatically pass Morale, Opinion, and Fear test, which is the same wording as Fearless. And I always thought it was odd in the 40K book that they use the same wording without just saying you have Fearless, but now I can see that there's some situations where a unit being Fearless changes like certain psychic powers that say that you can't target a unit with Fearless with this, but it doesn't mean Zealot gives them Fearless. So you're right, so the Cacophony could have done more damage to the Fire Drakes if they had failed a morale test after that, or a leadership test. This doesn't make much of a difference, but in a few rare circumstances, such as the cacophonic weapons, it does. You're right. ASC, as it keeps coming up in 40K, Matt flats out his rhinos after doing a move disembark action, rather than a disembark move. Is this a 30K difference or an error? It's an error. It's one I think I've made in a few battle reports, and I will stop, I promise. So essentially, if you are in a transport, if you disembark from the transport can go and do anything except tank shocking and ramming, but it can move 12 inches, it can flat out, it can fire, it can pop smoke, doesn't matter. But if you move and then disembark, the vehicle cannot do anything else it can't move at all again in that turn. It can still fire and pop smoke, whatever. So I have made that mistake. Too hip to stir. The cacophony have sonic shriekers, so when the Fire Drakes went in, wouldn't several of them have had reduced weapon skill from being in base contact? So sonic shriekers for Emperor's Children give -1 weapon skill to enemies in base contact, or engaged, one or the other, unless they are immune to fear. It says specifically immune to fear. So the Salamanders have an army-wide special rule that says they are immune to fear. So that's why it doesn't matter. So it's not because they had a Zealot with them, because once again, Zealot would not give them immune to fear, it's just they automatically pass fear test. Different wording, it's very important. Big Gaz J, models in Cataphracti Terminator armor can't run, Matt. You ran the Fire Drakes a couple times. That was brain fart. I know I shouldn't have done that now. Narfwalk, Shame Lee got diced so badly, he did. The written mission really didn't favor him either, since he really needed mobility for these progressive scoring ones. That was also, it looked even worse than it was, because of the way the objectives got placed, and then we rolled the deployment as hammer and anvil, and then I got the side with the more objectives. So if he had actually been sitting on the side, if we had swapped sides, for example, it would have been a very different game, because he would have been able to hold those objectives, and I would have been forced to come even more to him. So you're right, he definitely had the disadvantage because he wasn't as mobile, but it was also the rolling of getting to place the objectives and then choosing the sides. I take it this was filmed a while ago, and you're not using the new red book yet. It's funny because the first and the second mission, the two games that we played were filmed before and after the new red book came out. So yes, it was filmed before, because there's a few things. A lot of the units in both armies had significant adjustments. Sicarians nerfed because they got a points hike. Javelins buffed. Spartans nerfed. Apothecaries can join pretty much anything now and more. It's a long list. And that is important because in this first list we talked about why the apothecaries couldn't join the cacophony, and we had to get Primus Medicae instead. But now apothecaries can join any infantry squad that does not have terminators inside of it. So yes, in the second game, we were playing with the new book. Ben Ward, combi bolters are not 2 shots, only 1 shot, twin linked, and they don't even have rapid fire, so you done goofed. Ben Ward, combi bolters are just twin linked bolters, and so they have rapid fire. So Ben Ward, you done goofed. Valder, and we all make mistakes though, so no hard feelings. Valder, Sodomonte, Leviathans have Muth Recover. That would have been useful. I just missed that. It was my first time using the Leviathan, so there's a couple of rules I missed there, which I'll talk about for the next battle report. Bloody Lord QC, aren't tank traps impassable terrain for vehicles? Yes. However, because of the mission we're playing and because of the number of tank traps that were on the table, we just agreed to make them difficult terrain and not impassable, because it just would have, the entire board would have been impassable to my vehicles, which would have been really boring. Into the vault video of the second Salamanders vs. Emperor's Children. Sukram39, can a flyer arriving from reserve be in hover mode? If not, the Leviathan couldn't have charged a Storm Eagle. Yes. When a flyer comes in from reserve, you have to declare before it moves. So essentially before, if you read the paragraph about hover, it says that you can declare before it moves whether it's going to zoom or hover, and it even goes on to say, this means that if it comes in from reserve, before it comes in from reserve, you have to declare, because that's important. Tape 8, please stop saying the cacophony stuff. It's cacophony. I'm sorry. Incarnadine. Matt, at around 1 hour and 18 minutes in, the fire tricks can't attack a solo independent character in a challenge per the new FAQ. Now, I had not heard of this, so I looked it up, and at first it looked like you're right. On the image, because remember, the new FAQ, the draft FAQ, is on Warhammer 40,000's Facebook page. And when you look at the image, because they had both, what they did was they published an image that looked like a rule book page, and then they actually put in text all the stuff as well. And the image said, can a unit that is, basically, if there's an independent character in a challenge, nobody else can attack it except the guy in the challenge. And it said, no, they cannot. But then when you read the rest of the page, none of the answers made sense, and you realized that the entire thing was copy and pasted from the psychic phase, because it actually made no sense. And so thankfully, they had put the text, and in that one it said, yes, they can. So the picture is all the answers from the psychic phase, and so they copied and pasted the answers, or they copied and pasted the whole thing, and then they replaced all the questions, but then they didn't replace the answers. And so the picture is totally wrong, which is why it's a draft. And then the actual description has all the questions, and yes, you can totally attack anybody who's inside of a challenge as long as everything outside of the challenge has already been destroyed. So that's very important. Right. Slipstreams. The Legion Champion is not a support officer. He's only found on the page where they explain the rule. You're right. That was Battlescribe that said he was a support officer, and that was wrong. So I trusted Battlescribe, and it let me down. It's never happened before. The ones that are support officers have it in a little special rule blurb in their entry, which he does not have. You're right, so Legion Champion can be your compulsory HQ choice. Gladiator 5198. I think the I'm going on an adventure is a reference from The Hobbit. It's actually Baby Jake. Some people got it right, so sorry. Also, Champion's not support, yeah. And I'm sure drop pods in 30K have combi bolters. Kind of. They have twin link bolters, which is exactly the same as a combi bolter. But when you look up their entry, it says they have twin link bolters. Why they have to have twin link bolters and not a combi bolter, or why a combi bolter even exists, and why they don't just call them twin link bolters, that's beyond me. Because combi weapons are usually, they have a bolter and then something else underneath. It's combi, like combination, not a combi bolter as in it's 2 bolters. That's not a combination. I guess it is technically a combination of 2 bolters, but you could just call it a twin link bolter. Gladiator 5198, the blind test would also be taken at Vulcan's initiative. You didn't put a timestamp, but if Vulcan was part of the squad, you're right, it should have been at his initiative, so sorry if I forgot that. Night Lord A100, Baby Jake is the name of the show. My children liked that when they were very young. There's an internet point for you. Lucky Pants, he always plays Vulcan as toughness 6. I know, I always forget he's toughness 7 for some reason. Am I missing something? Yeah, so that was just my bad. Didn't really matter in the end. The guys just couldn't hurt each other anyways. Ever chosen 1992. The Dreadclaw does not have internal guide system, Matt! Exclamation mark. Pyre class would have deep strike mishapped. Don't know where you get that from because I looked up Dreadclaw and right on the list of special rules it says inertial guidance systems. So, sorry, it does have inertial guidance systems. Maybe you're looking at an old one or in a different book, but I have the new red book and it's right there. The General. Great game, guys. Minor error with the Leviathan. He should have had 2 Strength 8 Hammer of Wraths when he charged the Flyer and the Jet Bikes. You're right. I forgot that he had Heavy Charge or something. I can't remember what it's called. But he does get 2 Hammer of Wraths, and he also gets +1 Initiative when he charges. I forgot both of those. I don't know if it ever mattered because he wrecked the Storm Eagle and having the +1 Initiative. I don't know if it would have mattered against the bikes, but maybe it would have. Jimmy P. Vulcan has It Will Not Die with a reroll Blood of Fire rule. For some reason, I know he has It Will Not Die, so it wasn't so much that I don't know that rule. It's just I always forget to roll my It Will Not Dies. It's just often doesn't come up. Also, he has a Heavy Flamer Strength 6, so he could have overwatched Fulgrim and his Terminators. You're right, I did forget that. Thanks for watching this week's Rules You Got Wrong. Make sure you leave any comments. When you see that we make mistakes, make sure you leave a timestamp, and make sure you check to make sure that somebody else hasn't already done it. And if somebody else has already done it, just thumb up their comment instead so that we can see it a lot earlier. Thanks for watching. Happy wargaming.